The secrets of ancient Egypt aren't hidden under the pyramids. They aren't trapped in Egyptian tombs and temples. They're hidden inside the Vatican, and today you and I are going to set them free. The Rise of Hermanubis. Down in the shadows of the Vatican's vaults, Hermanubis, the jackal god who wears a toga, is lurking alongside marble saints and stony-eyed popes. You can find him past the incense and Latin chants. He's huge, a statue that looks just like Anubis as you know him, but with Roman flair. To be frank with you guys, it looks like Anubis took a Roman holiday and never came back. It might look like Anubis, but this amazing statue in the Vatican is actually Hermanubis, a hybrid god that shines a spotlight on Roman-Egyptian relations in ancient times. Now tell me, have you ever tried to please two sides of the family at the same time? Like bringing potato salad to a vegan barbecue? That's what the Romans did when they strolled into Egypt around 30 BC and realized, oh wow, these people really love their gods. Instead of launching a cultural cage match between Jupiter and Ra, the Romans pulled the old hybrid mashup. They birthed a cosmic chimera. The Romans saw Anubis, fell in love with him, and added him to their pantheon as a totally new mixed deity. Enter Hermanubis, a divine remix of Hermes, the Greek messenger god who zips around like a supernatural Amazon Prime delivery guy, and Anubis. Anubis was the Egyptian jackal-headed master of mummies and the original goth icon. Or in simple terms, the god of death. Hermanubis had Hermes' stylish swag and Anubis' deathly duties. Together they were basically the afterlife's customer service hotline. Lost soul? Call Hermanubis. Need a smooth journey to the underworld? Hermanubis is your guy. He even carried both the caduceus, Hermes' snake stick, and the Ankh, Egypt's eternal life emoji. Evidence of this ancient mashup can be found in everyone's favorite city of God, Vatican City. There might be other statues of Hermanubis, but none as immaculate as the one in the Vatican. It comes from the Ptolemaic period. That's when Egypt was basically Greece's Mediterranean Airbnb. Cultures collided, religions blended, and the fashion choices got fabulous. Hermanubis was the result of this cultural smoothie, Greeks and Romans and Egyptians all commingling like they were best pals. Unfortunately, this divine mashup was not forever. In the face of falling empires, Hermanubis was cast to the wayside. As Roman Egypt started crumbling and the world shuffled toward Christianity, Hermanubis faded into obscurity. He became a relic, a spiritual one-hit wonder from a civilization slowly losing itself to time and outside influence. And while you might not think such a thing could happen to the gods of today, you better check yourself. Anubis was worshipped for longer than Jesus Christ has been dead. One day, Jesus himself could exist as a lonely statue in the vault of some yet unknown religion. Question for you now. If you could create your own mashup god from two cultures, who would it be? Would you go full chaos and combine Thor and Buddha? Let's hear your divine crossover ideas in the comments. Mummy Mania Mayhem. The Vatican got punked. A couple of imposters recently snuck into the dusty corners of the Vatican museums, trying to blend in. For over a century, these two ancient Egyptian mummies rested peacefully behind glass, their linen layers whispering tales of pharaohs and afterlives. Except that these mummies were about as Egyptian as a microwave burrito. Thanks to some CSI-level sleuthing by Vatican researchers, it turns out these dusty relics are straight-up 19th century frauds. The museum equivalent of showing up to a costume party with a fake Gucci belt and saying you're royalty. To understand how these fakes ended up in the Vatican, we need to rewind to the 1800s, aka the age of mummy mania. It all kicked off thanks to Napoleon, the man who may or may not have invented the triple-flavored ice cream of the same name. He invaded Egypt in 1798. Soon after, Egyptomania spread across the continent faster than a plague in a medieval town. Every rich Victorian with a monocle had to have an Egyptian souvenir. What happened was the same thing that happens whenever there's a new craze. Grifters gotta grift. The two mummies we're here to investigate were less than 2 feet long and were believed to contain either children or, because ancient Egypt loved its bird gods, maybe even falcons. But when researchers broke out their X-rays, CT scans, and DNA tests, the truth was unwrapped like a piece of coal under the Christmas tree. Inside the linen of these mummies, which the Vatican had proudly been displaying for decades, was, well, not what anyone expected. Researchers at the Vatican found medieval bones belonging to one male and one female. That wasn't the issue, though. The problem was that the bones date to the Middle Ages, and if that wasn't sketchy enough, one had a modern nail chilling in its ribcage like it was casually being renovated by ghosts. Ironically, the only authentic part of these mummies was their bandages. They were confirmed to be real-deal ancient Egyptian wrappings. Why? Because 19th century scammers had access to the real stuff. They pillaged mummy bandages from tombs, then used them to wrap up medieval corpses pillaged from local graves. Isn't that the nastiest thing you've ever heard of? Imagine how filthy of a job it was. First unwrap a body that's been dead for 4,000 years, then take its wrappings, do some grave robbing, and wrap up the 500-year-old corpse like you work at the Christmas gift wrapping station at the mall. Mummies were so popular to the Victorians that one monk said in 1833 it would be hardly respectable upon one's return from Egypt to present oneself without a mummy in one hand and a crocodile in another. That's not satire, that's real historical thirst for Egyptian souvenirs. It's like saying you can't come back from Mexico without a sombrero and a bottle of tequila. Victorians turned ancient remains into high society collectibles. And the Vatican wasn't going to be left out, hence their mummy collection. In 2007, the Vatican decided to start doing some science. They had been enjoying their mummies without knowing much about them. So they launched the Vatican Mummy Project, a kind of holy forensic files mission to catalogue and preserve the museum's ancient human specimens. Thanks to the project, they've uncovered more than just the two fakes. In 2013, they realized a mummy they thought was a woman was actually a man. Who hasn't made that mistake once or twice, am I right? Another one had a tiny scalp tumor, the first ever found on an ancient mummy. It's like every scan reveals a new bonus feature. What other fakes, frauds, or shams do you think the Vatican might have stashed away in its vaults? And now for a quick break, but first I wanted to give a shout out and big thank you to David Pendleton and Recon1 for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. Rome's Secret Pyramid. There was a time when a Roman nobleman was so obsessed with ancient Egypt that he had himself buried like a pharaoh. Rome was about one fantasy away from becoming the new Egypt. The nobleman's tomb still stands as one of the most impressive Mediterranean pyramids not in Egypt. Tucked beside Rome's Porta San Paolo, rising like a pointy middle finger to architectural expectations, stands a 2,000-year-old Egyptian-style pyramid. It's called the Pyramid of Cestius, and it's the final resting place of one Roman nobleman named Gaius Cestius, a magistrate and bigwig banquet official. Cestius skipped the usual marble mausoleum and went full-on pyramid. But why? Was it a midlife crisis? Did he just have a flair for the dramatic? Or was this a serious case of Nile fever? To understand, I have to give you a little bit of a history lesson. Between 18 and 12 BC, while Augustus was tightening his grip on the empire, Gaius Cestius was making plans, eternal ones. Most Roman aristocrats opted for statues, columns, maybe a nice urn. But Cestius, he was flipping through his vacation photos and thought, you know what would look great in downtown Rome? A 100-foot tall Egyptian pyramid. I can even be buried in it. But Cestius didn't quite know his Egyptian engineering. In an ironic twist of fate, his pyramid bears more resemblance to the Nubian pyramids of Meroe in modern-day Sudan than the Great Pyramids of Giza. The Nubians' pyramids were sleeker, more sharply angled, smaller, steeper, and pretty dang distinct. So was Cestius inspired by Egypt? By Nubia? Or was he mixing global decor and calling it eclectic? Whatever the case, when his tomb went up just outside the city limits, there were some seriously jealous peasants. I'm still jealous of this thing, and it's been 2,000 years. Why can't I be buried in a pyramid instead of at the old corpse dumping ground we call our local graveyard? What's really funny is that a few centuries after the pyramid was built, Rome forgot what it was for. They forgot about Cestius and started saying the pyramid was built for Remus, one of the twin founders of Rome. It wasn't until the 1600s that the pyramid was cracked open and the truth was revealed, thanks to a Latin inscription declaring the tomb's true tenant, Gaius Cestius Ipulo. Inside, archaeologists found faded frescoes and a chamber so well preserved, it could have been reused to bury a medieval king. Fast forward to the 17th century and Pope Alexander VII got in on the action, restoring the tomb and leaving a thank you note in stone. The Pope himself had this thing restored to its original glory, and now it's just kind of hanging out in Rome, a weird reminder of the Roman obsession with their neighbors in Egypt. It's also not the only one. Here's something almost nobody knows. There was once another pyramid in Rome. Yep, the Pyramid of Romulus, a now vanished sibling structure near the Vatican. It met a tragic fate in the 16th century when Pope Alexander VI had it torn down for marble to build a familiar structure. Can you guess which one? St. Peter's Basilica, or more specifically, the Basilica's steps. Imagine using an ancient mystery tomb as construction material. The pyramid is long gone now, and its secrets are lost forever, all thanks to the Pope who was too lazy to go to Home Depot for his marble. The Holy Family's Egyptian road trip. If you think your family road trips as a kid were intense, just wait until you hear about Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus trekking thousands of miles across ancient Egypt while literally fleeing for their lives. While Jesus is typically associated with Jerusalem, a lot of Christians don't even know about his connection to Egypt. You can even walk that legendary trail yourself, following in Jesus' own footsteps. Scientists and biblical scholars have pieced together 25 sacred steps across the country, from the dusty Delta to lush Upper Egypt. Each step was a resting point for the Holy Family on their harrowing journey through the land of the Nile. What you might find even more interesting is that this particular chapter in Christ's life has been largely ignored by the Vatican. This part of Christian tradition is more deeply honored within the Coptic and Armenian Christian communities. The Gospel of Matthew tells us that King Herod went full paranoid tyrant after the Magi told him that the new king of the Jews would be born any day now. Fearing for his throne, Herod launched a genocidal manhunt known as the infamous Massacre of the Innocents. Herod ordered all male children under 2 in Bethlehem to be killed. Yes, it was as horrifying as it sounds. Luckily, there was an angelic intervention. An angel's warning prompted Joseph to get up, grab Mary, and take their baby to Egypt to avoid Herod. The Holy Family became refugees, slipping quietly into the Sinai and across Egypt's sprawling landscape. Starting in Rafah near today's border with Gaza, they moved through Tel al-Farama, then on to Kafr al-Sheikh, Tel Basta, and Samanud, all ancient Nile cities still hosting pilgrims and curious travelers. The trio swung through Wadi al-Natran, a desert oasis that's now home to ancient monasteries like Amba Bishoy and Deir al-Suryan, both of which were founded on ground the Holy Family was believed to have walked. If you're into early Christian monasticism or just really atmospheric ruins, you've got to follow this trail and check out the monasteries. Next up was Cairo. The Holy Family passed through Mataria, where the legendary Tree of the Virgin Mary still draws crowds. Nearby, the Hanging Church, the Church of Saints Sergius and Bacchus, and Zuwayla Church mark some of the holiest real estate in Egypt. I bet you had no idea Egypt was so filled with holy sanctuaries built on ground physically touched by baby Jesus. And get this, legend says Joseph may have worked construction at the Babylon fortress in Old Cairo, which, if true, makes him the original biblical contractor. I hope you aren't exhausted yet, because baby Jesus' trip through Egypt isn't quite over. At Mahdi, they crossed the Nile, an act commemorated by the Church of the Virgin Mary. According to tradition, a page from the Old Testament Bible floated up to the surface of the river bearing the words, "Blessed are the people of Egypt." Baby Jesus out here wading across rivers and blessing people before he was teething. From there, the family continued south through Mitrahina, Gebel Alter, and Al-Minya until they reached Asyut, home to the majestic Al-Muharraq monastery. And this isn't just any holy site. It's believed to sit on the first Christian church ever, consecrated by Jesus himself. Hey guys, these places are holier than anywhere in Rome. The Vatican's got nothing on Egyptian monasteries consecrated by infant Jesus. It doesn't get holier than that. Legend even claims that after the resurrection, Jesus returned here with the Virgin Mary and the disciples to bless the church and conduct the first liturgy before jetting back to heaven. Beat that for a final family reunion. This was the last stop on the holy journey. From Asyut, the family returned to Bethlehem, but only after an angel appeared to Joseph and told him it was time to return to the Promised Land. This entire holy trail unfolds in a land most famous for pharaohs, pyramids, and papyrus. Yet Egypt also holds this hidden Christian heartbeat, one that the Vatican has quietly acknowledged through its deep ties with the Coptic Church and its own vast collection of Egypto-Christian artifacts. This is a reminder that Egypt isn't just the land of the Sphinx. It's also where the Savior hid as a child, walking through villages, resting under trees, drinking from wells, and sanctifying every stop along the way. Would you take the walk? Could you follow the trail of miracles from tree roots and crypts to floating Bible verses? If you have or know anyone who has followed the full trail, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Aliens in the archives. Long before the skies over Roswell lit up with conspiracy theories, something just as strange streaked across the desert heavens of ancient Egypt, leaving scribes shaken, priests scrambling for incense, and modern-day ufologists screaming, "Told you so." This is the unsolved mystery of the Thule Papyrus, a bizarre, possibly apocryphal Egyptian document that some claim is the world's oldest UFO sighting. The text supposedly dates to the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose III, around 1480 BC, and details a sky show so wild it left royal soldiers flopping onto their bellies in fear. But here's the Vatican twist. The only known link to this ancient X-Files episode comes from Alberto Tulli, the former director of the Egyptian section of the Vatican Museum. According to tradition, Alberto Tulli stumbled across the document in a Cairo antique shop in 1933. It was too expensive to buy at the moment, so he copied it instead. The merchant let him copy the hieroglyphs onto a sheet of paper, which he then had transcribed. No one knows what happened to the original document. The man behind the translation was Prince Boris de Rachovitz. According to his detailed analysis of the hieroglyphs, the papyrus was a document detailing a mass UFO sighting almost 3,500 years ago. The text says that fire circles, silent, massive, and brighter than the sun, flooded the sky. The Pharaoh's army watched in stunned silence as they descended from space, filling up the sky with lights and hovering discs. Flocks of birds fell dead from the sky. The event was so disturbing, Thutmose himself lit incense to appease the gods. The Thule Papyrus leads like a sci-fi movie wrapped in mummy linen. It tells of disc-shaped craft flying in formation, emitting foul odors, and terrifying everyone from scribes to pharaohs. The craziest part, at least to me, is how long the phenomenon lasted. The discs stuck around for days, performing celestial somersaults across the sky, before heading south like migrating ducks from a dystopian planet. What the heck happened here? Either aliens invaded ancient Egyptian airspace, or someone was hitting the lotus wine a little too hard. This whole phenomenon got tethered to the Vatican thanks to Tully's role as an official in its Egyptian Antiquities department. Some speculate the Vatican had access to the original and chose to keep it under wraps. The idea that the Catholic Church might be sitting on alien-related documents from ancient Egypt is enough to keep Reddit threads spinning into eternity. It fuels theories that early Christianity and ancient Egyptian religion may have more cosmic common ground than the Church would like to admit, especially given all the Egyptian relics hidden in plain sight at the Vatican. This isn't just about a bit of old paper with a UFO report scribbled on it in hieroglyphs. This is about the Catholic Church hiding evidence of extraterrestrial encounters. Even if the Thule Papyrus is a fake, a fraud, a joke, there is still a chance that the Vatican has documents proving aliens exist. If the Vatican is watching, I have just one thing to say. Show us the aliens! And hit that subscribe button. The Forgotten Palace of the Popes. In 2024, under the bustling feet of modern Romans and wide-eyed tourists snapping selfies, something ancient stirred. A construction team prepping Piazza San Giovanni in Laterano for the Vatican's 2025 Jubilee Bash accidentally cracked open a piece of papal history. It was the biggest discovery near the Vatican in years. A forgotten Pope's palace buried beneath centuries of city life like a divine time capsule was unearthed. Now, before you picture a Vatican-themed escape room, let's break this down. What archaeologists uncovered wasn't some crumbling cellar. This was a monumental structure, possibly part of the long-lost Patriarchate, where popes lived and worked before the church made its headquarters in the Vatican. According to Italy's Ministry of Culture, the walls on the eastern edge of the dig site tell a dramatic tale. Constructed during a time when Rome's aristocrats were beefing hard, the walls of the palace likely doubled as fortifications around the central basilica, turning it into a kind of holy panic room, if you will. The church has been trying to find this place for years. It was the original Vatican, the home of popes before the papal seat shifted to Avignon in France in 1305. Sadly though, much of this place's history is lost. It's like if archaeologists found an even older White House buried in Washington, D.C., but with barely any records of its history, origins, or function. It's very cool, but also very mysterious. And because of the Jubilee this year, archaeologists are a bit limited in the work they can do. In case you aren't sure what Jubilee is, let me quickly explain. It is the Catholic Holy Year that rolls around every quarter century and brings millions of pilgrims flooding into Rome for blessings, indulgences, and more rosaries than you can count. In preparation, the city often gets a facelift. It's like what cities do when they host the Olympics. New piazzas, cleaner streets, put the homeless people on a bus and send them away for a month. While this new palace might have predated the official establishment of Vatican City, it highlights just how long the church's roots have been entwined with the city of Rome. If anything, this secret papal palace and its ancient Egyptian echoes in the art and architecture around it reminds us that the Vatican is a time machine, one built on layers of sacred, scandalous, and surprising history. The Pharaoh's needle in the Pope's backyard. There it stands. Tall, proud, silent. It pierces the Roman sky from the very heart of St. Peter's Square, an ancient red granite sentinel from a land of pyramids and sun gods. While tourists and their cameras flock to the iconic dome of St. Peter's Basilica, I'm more interested in a 4,000-year-old Egyptian obelisk in the square. It's kind of funny if you think about it. In the center of the most sacred Catholic site on earth rises a monument from the realm of Ra, carted over by none other than Caligula, ancient Rome's most eccentric emperor. The crown jewel of the Vatican is a treasure from a pagan land stolen by a heathen emperor. You're not going to believe what kinds of horrors it's been involved in over the centuries. But first, some fast facts that'll make your history teacher weep tears of joy. Rome is home to more standing Egyptian obelisks than Egypt itself. While most countries collect fridge magnets, ancient Rome hoarded obelisks like divine Pokemon. The Vatican's obelisk, also known as Caligula's obelisk, is just one of 8 authentic Egyptian obelisks dotting Rome's skyline. This particular one is the only obelisk that's remained standing since Roman times. The rest have fallen over at least once each. But how the heck did it get here? Around 30 BC, Emperor Augustus, the guy who took over after Julius Caesar got shanked, had this granite monolith shipped to Alexandria, where he set it up in a forum to show off Rome's new control of Egypt. Sadly though, nobody knows where it came from. No hieroglyphs grace its face, which is highly unusual for an obelisk. And because there is no inscription, experts don't know which pharaoh ordered it built. Fast forward to 37 AD. Caligula, drama king of the Roman Empire, had the obelisk dragged across the Mediterranean to Rome, where it was plopped down in his mom's old garden. I'm not making this up. He put it in his mom's garden of all places. Eventually, though, the obelisk found a more dramatic home. It was moved to the central spine of Caligula's circus, a chariot racing track that once stood where St. Peter's Basilica now towers. Parts of that circus are buried beneath the current basilica. If you know Caligula, you know he was not a fan of Christians. Tradition tells us that the obelisk was used as a site for sacrificing Christians to Roman gods. It's never been 100% confirmed, but history does point to bloody rituals being carried out on Vatican grounds. The obelisk remained in the same spot until the 16th century. Pope Sixtus V in 1585 was a man with a vision. Round up Rome's ancient obelisks, stand them up, and reclaim Rome's reputation as the capital of the sacred and the eternal. The Vatican obelisk was priority number 1. Moving it was an epic feat. It took 13 months, a forest's worth of wooden scaffolding, and hundreds of workers. By 1586, it stood where it's still standing today, not as a Roman relic, but as a Christianized icon, crowned with a cross said to contain relics of Christ himself. Originally, there had been a bronze globe that topped the obelisk. It supposedly held the ashes of Julius Caesar. When the 16th century Reno happened, the globe was opened, found to be empty and discarded. You can see it today in the Capitoline museums, while the obelisk's new role as a holy lightning rod continues. It's no coincidence that this obelisk, a monument once linked to the Egyptian sun god Ra, now serves the Vatican, the heart of Christianity. The symbolic takeover is practically theatrical, an icon of ancient Egypt, conquered by Rome, resurrected by the Church, and capped with the cross. It's like a historical relay race through civilizations, and the baton is a 326-ton monolith. Here's the real question. If you were Pope and had a god-sized budget, what ancient monument would you move to your front yard? Would you bring a Sphinx to Vatican City? Or plant a ziggurat next to the Sistine Chapel? The creation of the Egyptian collection. Rome, 1838. The Eternal City smelled like incense, politics, and museum fever. Behind the Vatican walls, Pope Gregory XVI pulled off what might be the quirkiest spending ban in church history, resulting in the incredible collection of Egyptian artifacts still at the Vatican today. The Pope put his foot down. No more Etruscan, Greek, or Roman antiques, he commanded. Only Egyptian, and just like that, the Holy See went full Nile mode. The Vatican had made up its mind to create a museum of Egyptian-only artifacts. The job fell to Barnabite priest Father Luigi Ungarelli. He was a man so hyped about hieroglyphs he probably dreamt in them. It was barely a year later that the Gregorian Egyptian Museum officially opened on February 16, 1839. Up until that point, Egyptology had been a fringe study of mummies and tombs. No one really knew much about Egyptian history. They just liked digging holes in the sand and stealing trinkets. With the discovery of the Rosetta Stone dug up in 1799 during Napoleon's Egypt assault phase, the ancient realm started to make sense. The Rosetta Stone had a decree on it from 196 BC in 3 scripts: hieroglyphic, Demotic, and Greek. By 1822, Frenchman Jean-François Champollion cracked the code like a linguistic Sherlock Holmes, and suddenly ancient Egypt started talking. Scholars went nuts. Collectors scrambled for artifacts. A movement known today as Egyptomania erupted. It was like Pokemon cards for academics. Gotta decode 'em all. The Pope was not immune to this fad. Gregory XVI, a monk turned Pope in 1831, founded not 1, not 2, but 3 museums in the Vatican. The Gregorian Etruscan Museum in 1837, the Gregorian Egyptian Museum in 1839, the Gregoriano Profano Museum in 1844. Fast forward to today, Dr. Alessia Amenta, head of the Vatican's Egyptian and Near Eastern Antiquities Department, says the museum is alive. Researchers, restorers, and DNA nerds all dig into its treasures. They've teamed up with science labs to X-ray mummies, unwrap ancient linens, and figure out what's inside without slicing a single bandage. Inside the museum today, your eyeballs are assaulted by cat mummies, crocodile statues, and goddesses. As we speak, scientists with the Sekhmet project are studying dozens of statues of Sekhmet, the lioness-headed goddess, taken from Amenhotep III's temple and brought to Vatican City. The next time you wander into the Vatican and see crocodile gods chilling next to cherubs, remember that once upon a time a pope caught Egyptomania, hired a priest with hieroglyph fever, and started dragging artifacts across a continent. And that, friends, is how the pharaohs moved in next door to the pope. Who says the Vatican can't party like it's 1999 BC? If you could have your own museum filled with artifacts from your favorite civilization, which would it be? Let me know, and thanks so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and check out other amazing videos from the channel.